Okay, can everybody see this?
Yep.
All right, great. So I was a little mysterious in the advertisements about this. So we have in Ohio our own, what I call our own Area 51, our area of mystery, which is Southeastern Ohio. And the reason I say that is, I was trying to come up with ideas for a program, and it dawned on me on all of our other programs, whether we are talking about snakes or we're talking about salamanders or turtles or whatever it happens to be, there always seems to be a species in the bunch of what we're talking about that only lives in Southern Ohio. So that in itself is not enough to do a program on, because it'd just be rehashing a bunch of things we've already talked about. So I started thinking and wondering about, why is that? And that's what led me to this program. So there are many natural things that are unique to Southeastern Ohio. So we will actually first look at why that is, and then we will look at the what. Okay, but first, just very quickly, a look at the American history of Southeastern Ohio. First, in 1749, as you see on the map here, something called the Ohio Company made its first and second purchases in Southeastern Ohio with a land grant from the British Crown on behalf of Virginia investors. And that land was divvied up among those investors. Then on the far east, you see there something called the Seven Ranges was developed, and that was land acquired by the British Crown also from France following the 1763 Treaty of Paris, which is the treaty that actually ended the Revolutionary War. Well, that didn't last too long because squatters settled on the land. And because of all the trouble that caused, our brand spanking new U.S. Congress passed something called the Land Ordinance. And through that, the land was formally surveyed, formally settled, sold, and taxed. And that happened in 1785. And in 1786, it formally became known as the Seven Ranges. And then kind of in the middle there, in 1798, finally, Congress established what was called the Congress Lands. And that was a group of land tracts west of the Scioto. And before you get to the Ohio Company first and second purchases and the Seven Ranges. And that was land that was made available for sale to the general public through land offices in various cities throughout the state. So in terms of our history, that's how Southeastern Ohio began as what it is today. So to jump back from there, the region's largest unique feature, and the thing that sets the stage for all the other unique features, is its geology and geography as it was created during prehistory. And this is a map of the geological features as they ended up after the glacial periods. The yellow you see there kind of marks the area that was not touched by glaciation. That area has what we call young rock, at least comparably young to what the rest of the state has. And I've circled that area there in yellow. The Southeast has surface bedrock layers that are Pennsylvanian and Permian rock, which was created between 323 and 251 million years ago. Now, that's a very, very long time ago, but our bedrock here and that to the west of us was created between 419 and 541 million years ago, much, much earlier than that of the Southeast. Ours was created in the Devonian, Silurian, and Cambrian and Ordovician periods, which came much earlier than the Mississippian and especially the Pennsylvanian and Permian periods that formed the bedrock of Southeastern Ohio. It's much different type of bedrock, and that's most noticeable in places like the Hocking Hills, like Old Man's Cave, where all the bedrock you see is that Black Hand sandstone, whereas here everything's that Devonian limestone. After that was formed, then of course we had the Ice Age. The Laurentine ice sheet came down from Canada, and we had the three glaciers, the pre-Illinoisan, the Illinoisan and the Wisconsinan, which we talked about in another program, that lasted between 1 million to 14,000 years ago. And it stretched over the part of the continent that you see there. And that red square is where Ohio is. And you can see it covered all of Ohio except for the southeastern corner, which is the area I'm showing here. That's the state of Ohio. And this shows you where the glaciated and unglaciated portions were. The glaciers basically came from the northeast, and they acted like a giant bulldozer that flattened most of the state and pushed dirt and rock and boulders to the southeast and created the hills that we've got there. Basically left big piles of rubble. And those hills, that rubble, became what we today know as north to south, the Allegheny Plateau, which starts the beginning of the Allegheny Mountains in Pennsylvania, and then our Hocking Hills, and then farther south, the Appalachian Plateau, which is the beginning of the Appalachian Mountains. So this is part of the geography of that region being created. Next, with that being created, as you can see from this map, we had this gigantic lake called Lake Tite, which covered part of West Virginia, Kentucky, and Ohio. It fed something called the Taze River, which at that time, because of elevations in different parts of the country, it ran northwest, then west, and then south into something that you see here in the lower left, the Mississippi embayment. And there I've got that circled, and you can see from the shape of that, and you look at what that was in Ohio, that created actually a lot of the lakes and wetlands that we have in existence today. And I've circled that area on the left there. A lot of that's what is a part of Southern Ohio and the Hocking Hills. So that's part of it. That's part of what created the habitat we have today. Now, another thing that's part of that habitat, the Ohio River, it borders the southeastern part of the state, which is what we're talking about, beginning with the headwaters. And for us, the headwaters, the part of it that affects us is the midpoint between Pittsburgh and East Liverpool, which is the state line for us, down to about Gallipolis. Although the true headwaters are considered to be at Pittsburgh, which is where they say the Ohio River actually starts, at the confluence in Pittsburgh of the Mahoning and Monongahela rivers, as you see the dot for Pittsburgh on the map. But that doesn't really affect our southeastern habitats until you're actually at the Ohio-Pennsylvania line, as I've indicated with my squiggly red line there. And by the time you get to Gallipolis, with the Ohio River moving west, you're really no longer in the southeastern part of the state. So what does all that habitat that was created in our prehistory do for its inhabitants? That's the next question. Well, we are going to take a look at some examples. Examples of things that that habitat is ripe for, if you want to put it that way. First, the Hocking State Forest has a climate that is milder than the rest of the state, and that makes it a favorable habitat for things like, for example, the eastern hemlock, which is found nowhere else in the state. If you go to, I'm trying to think of what the park is now. It's either Three Creeks or is it Cedar Creek? The one that's right off of 33.
Clear Creek, right?
I'm sorry, Clear Creek. Yes.
Clear Creek, yeah.
Yeah. Some of those trails there that you go on, there's a lot of hemlock trees, and they're really found nowhere else, any other region of the state. And it's because of that climate. And there are numerous other plant species that live only in the Hocking State Forest, including rock fir moss, least grape fern, roundleaf catchfly, the Appalachian filmy fern, Silene rotundifolia, and Botrychium simplex. And these are all plants that need cooler, damp growing conditions exactly what they are given by the region's climate. And in the middle here, this is a quick climate data summary for the Hocking State Forest. This is an average over the last 10 years from 2019 back. Hottest month, July, with an average temperature of 73 degrees. How about that? The coldest month, January, on average 29 degrees. Think of how many days we have here where we have 20 degrees, 19 degrees, 18 degrees. It hasn't gotten below 29 on average there. Wettest month, May, with 2.48 inches average of rainfall. This one kind of knocks me over. Windiest month, on average, January, with 7-mile-per-hour winds average. Think of how many days we have here where we get wind gusts 20 miles per hour, 25, 30, and they don't on average get above 7 on their windiest month. And an annual precipitation of 21.99 inches per year. A lot different from what we have here. And to give you a comparison of that, this kind of blurry chart on the left, this is weather data from 2000. On the left is Hocking Hills State Park for the year, month by month. And as you can see, the warmest month in 2000 was actually May, where the top temperature was about 79 degrees. And they had rainfall of less than 0.2 inches. Where if you look at the same month, May, for Columbus that year, 72, and we got as high as 82 in July for an average temperature, and it never even approached 80 in Hocking Hills. And if you look at lows, the lowest it got in any month in Hocking Hills State Park was 32. Whereas here, we had temperatures, January, like about 18 degrees, February, 20 degrees. So big difference overall. And that's why it's a good environment for those types of plants that we just discussed. So to continue, this guy, which we talked about in another program, the eastern spadefoot toad, it's only found in southeastern Ohio. They are most notably different from all other toad species in that they exhibit vertical pupils like those of a cat. As you see here, no other toad species, or frog species for that matter, has pupils like that. Now, they only live in forested areas such as Hocking and Zaleski forests that have loose or sandy soil. They cannot survive in soil such as the clay base like we have in central Ohio. They have to have the loose or sandy soil. Next, we'll look at a couple of salamanders. First is the two-lined salamander. They occur in several eastern states, in some central states, plus portions of Canada. But in terms of Ohio, they've only been found in southeastern portions of our state, only in a couple of counties. They prefer small rocky streams or seeps in forests, but they may also show up in more moist areas far from running water, so wetlands. Some have also been found on stony shores of small lakes and rivers. Bottom line, they need wet to moist and seasonally mild habitats like those that our southeast region has. And if you're unfamiliar with the term, because I know I was, a seep is a moist or wet place where groundwater reaches the Earth's surface from an underground aquifer. But it is not a place where the water flows. It just kind of bubbles up from a spring from an underground aquifer. So that's what a seep is. Another salamander is this guy, the dusky salamander, and they are one of a species of lungless salamanders. They are active at night and early morning. They live under rocks and debris in shallow woodland streams, springs, and wetland areas, like their northern two-lined cousins. Much of the southeast of our state is ideal for habitat for them, and that's the only place they are found. Now, this was a new one on me. I don't know who else has heard of this. The smooth earth snake, this pale looking guy here. They are found in several other states, but in Ohio, only in the Shawnee and Pike forests. Like the eastern spadefoot toad, it lives only in loose soil and leaf litter of forest floors. And it's not a big snake. At an average 8 inches long, it is not just the smallest snake found in Ohio, but one of the smallest in the US. Has anybody ever heard of the smooth earth snake before, or even seen one?
No.
This was a totally new species to me when I read about it. I had not heard of this before. And it's, to me, it's unusual to see a snake or a reptile, for that fact, that is that pale in color. And, you know, I've seen, you know, other species like gray rat snakes. I've seen baby gray rat snakes that are bigger than 8 inches long. Next, our venomous buddies. All three of Ohio's venomous snakes are only found in the southeastern part of the state. First on the left, the eastern copperhead. Now they are found in river bottoms where leaf and plant debris provides cover for them to hide in. They are also at times located in wooded areas. Unfortunately, the eastern fox snake, which is harmless and is only found in the eastern Lake Erie basin area, it is often mistaken for copperheads and are killed by humans as a result, which is a shame, because the eastern fox snake is only found in that one region. Those, if you've ever been up around the eastern Lake Erie basin, those swampy areas that you see there, that's the only place they live. In the middle, we have the eastern Massasauga rattlesnake. Now they are an endangered species, both state and federally, and they are found only in Champaign, Wyandotte, and Trumbull counties. They are found in forested swamplands, marshy grasslands, lake edges, dry prairie, and woodlands. And they are, of the three, the ones that have the most potent venom. And then on the right, the one that people are the most familiar with, the timber rattlesnake, they live in various remote habitats, mountainous forests, pine forests, swamps, farm fields, and river floodplains. In the winter, they will hibernate in crevices in the ground. They are also very good climbers and, believe it or not, have been found in trees at heights of more than 80 feet. So these three, only in Southeastern Ohio. Probably a good thing, I suppose. Now, you may wonder, what about insects and true bugs? We know there are many thousands of species, and I researched and I could not find any that are specific to Southern Ohio, but I'm sure if I had the time and looked long enough, there are probably some that exist, but I could not find any. Doesn't mean they don't exist. I just didn't have enough time, was not able to come up with any. And as for birds, I kind of defer to Christy on this. You know, we have migratory and non-migratory birds, and the non-migratory are known to shift their ranges, often because of man impacting their habitats. But again, I could find no information on birds that are local only to the southeastern region of our state. Christy, do you know anything on that?
I do, and there are some because we often have to drive down to see those, and those are usually the farther south migrants, which are more sensitive. The one thing is that it's like the snowy owls. If we're going to have an eruption, it's going to be more in the northern part of the state, and a lot of like in wintertime, if it gets too cold in Canada, they'll come up until they find it a bit warmer. And that's usually still the northern part of the state, around Cleveland, around the Erie Shores and North Shore of Ohio.
Yeah.
But there are ones that migrate down from Canada that will go to like Southern Ohio and not have to go any further because it's warm enough. So in the Cincinnati area, Highland County, like on the borders of Pennsylvania and Kentucky, you'll see things down there that we do not have up here, and people here gather.
Mm-hmm.
We've had some odd hummingbirds that don't belong here, but they would not do well any further north than like Cincinnati. But for Southeastern, I know you mentioned about Three Creeks, and what's the other one down there that's in Appalachia? Anyway, there are birds there that we do not get here. The other very odd thing I've talked about before very quickly is we've had that whole chickadee dividing line in Ohio.
Uh-huh.
So Mansfield and North tend to be the black cap chickadee, and Point South tend to be the Carolina chickadee. So, you know, people here, it has a black cap. The nuances are very subtle about the amount of white on the wings and the shape and the size and all that. But we did have, I think I mentioned last winter, we had our first, maybe 2 winters ago, we had our first black cap chickadee that was wintering here all winter, and that was at Walnut Woods Metro Park. And now since then, we've seen a few in the yards. There is a crossover range too, which they will interbreed, which is very interesting. So they have a cross. But yeah, some of the ducks and things you'll see in Southern Ohio. But Appalachian Ohio, I'm not sure about. I'd love to check on that for you.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Interesting.
Okay. Next, so you might wonder, what about mammals? Well, some mammals, like for example, bobcats and black bears, were once extirpated from our state, as we've talked about in the past. And eventually they began to reappear in Southern Ohio after many years. They are on the move, and they are more frequently being seen closer to Central Ohio, especially the bobcat. The mammals tend to, especially the larger ones, tend to expand their ranges over time. So they aren't really, they're more hardy. They aren't really bound by the whole climate factor like some of these other creatures we've talked about. So I don't think we're really ever going to see any of them that, you know, are only going to be found in, you know, some in Southeastern Ohio, and it's going to be that way forever because they move the ranges. Okay, any questions on any of this?
I do have a comment, Don. I think you might want to change. Just because I grew up along the Ohio River, I know that it's the Allegheny and the Monongahela that form the Ohio River.
Oh, is it? I had read Monongahela and Mahoning. Okay, yeah. I'm gonna have to go back and check that.
Yeah, it's the Allegheny.
Allegheny, okay. That actually would make more sense.
Yeah.
From what I know of the geography. Okay, well, thank you for letting me know that. I'm definitely gonna dig into that. Yeah. Okay. And I will stop the share at that point and stop recording.
Linda.
See if I can remember how to do that. And that took